I'm always sad when I hear things that sell us short. In summary, I think that my experience in Ghana was very valuable. Working as an occupational therapist with autistic children in Ghana, I got exposed to a lot of these really challenging situations in a system that was not very accommodating. We didn't have a lot of equipment, and you had to be really creative and really go out of your way to help these people. Unlike in a setting like the US or the UK, where yes, there are challenges, but they have a lot more available to them. They have a lot more resources, and they have a lot more standardized procedures that could make things a little bit easier. So I think that there was so much value, and there is so much value in having to be creative and make something out of nothing like we do in Ghana.
You are welcome once again to the Life of the Afro-Pole. Today, I'm excited to have another young lady who is doing so well in her profession, and she has an exciting story to share with all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, today my guest is Nana Serwaa. She's a PhD candidate at NYU, and I'm excited to have her today join us for another exciting session. Nana, you are welcome.
Thank you very much. Actually, my first name is Joanna Nana Serwaa. I have 3 first names.
Oh, great. Okay. Well noted. Okay. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. So if you're ready, we'll go straight into the conversation. We'll start off with a little bit about yourself, and then you tell us your career journey too.
Okay, so I guess that's a very general question, but my name is Nana Serwaa. I like to go by Nana Serwaa now, even though a lot of people know me as Joanna.
Okay.
I'm Ghanaian. I was born in Accra. I lived most of my life in Ghana, in Accra and Kumasi, mainly in Kumasi because that's where my parents are.
Yeah.
I'm a Presbyterian. I'm a Christian. I am a feminist, an advocate. I am an occupational therapist by profession. And that is also one of the reasons why I like to advocate for people with disability. I think that my love for activism had always been there, but my profession kind of narrowed it a bit. Yes. So yes, that's generally me. I don't know if you need anything specific.
Yeah, a little bit about your educational background from Ghana into the US.
Yeah, so I went to Abri Girls High School, or start from high school. And from there, I moved to Legon, University of Ghana, Legon, to study occupational therapy. I was part of the 3rd batch of students to study occupational therapy. And actually, I did not know what the course was about. University of Ghana just gave it to me, like they sometimes. Yeah. And I had planned my life. I didn't want to take a gap year. So I was like, oh, let me go and see what's about. If I don't like it, I could always stop or switch. But then when I started the program, I realized that it was everything that I wanted to do. But also, I believe that it doesn't happen for everybody that way, but I prayed about what I wanted to do in university. And I think that even though I did not understand or I did not know it at the time, that was where God was leading me to go. So I entered the program. I fell in love with it, even though it was challenging because there weren't, as at the time I was in school, there weren't any practicing occupational therapists. The only occupational therapists were my lecturers, 2 of them who had been trained out of the country and were lecturing, so they weren't really practicing. So there wasn't anybody to look at and see in the clinic or in any of the practice settings to say that this is an occupational therapist. So that was really challenging. And a lot of people, my classmates, even some of my professors in university did not know what I was studying or what it was about. But so that was insightful. And that's actually what led me to pursue postgrad studies in the US because there's such a need for occupational therapy. And context, I guess you have to know what occupational therapy is for it to make sense.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I'll follow up from that angle. If somebody listening to us doesn't really know what it is about, can you briefly describe to us what occupational therapist is, especially for, just like you said, it was a fairly new thing back in Ghana. Yeah.
And so occupation for us occupational therapists is anything meaningful you do to occupy time. So from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to sleep, you perform various occupations, brushing your teeth, bathing, working, driving, writing, all the things you do that have meaning to you are occupations. So it's not necessarily your job. A lot of people hear occupation and think, oh, we deal with jobs or vocations or professions.
Okay.
And that's not how we explain occupation as occupational therapists.
Okay.
So basically anything meaningful you do to occupy time. So the occupational therapist is particularly a rehabilitation specialist.
Okay.
I like to say rehabilitation and habilitation. So rehabilitation is helping people get back to doing the things that are meaningful to them. But habilitation is also for people who never got to do those things. So helping them find a way to do things that are meaningful to them. So habilitation could be for somebody like someone who has experienced a stroke, and because of the stroke, they are not able to write or to cook or to drive, something meaningful to them. So we rehabilitate those people. And then for people like children with autism or Down syndrome who, because of the way they are developing, are not able to do basic things, we help them do those things. So we habilitate them so that they'll be able to function optimally. Yeah, so basically occupational therapy is a health profession that helps people do the things they want to do and need to do in spite of some form of disability or challenge.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that insight. How important is your work experience back in Ghana compared to what you do now? You know, usually we hear the myth that whatever you do back home, once you come here, has no value. What role has your work experience back in Ghana played in your career over here?
Well, that's why I think that's a very, do I have to censor myself? Because that's a very ridiculous myth. Because I think that everything that we do is valuable. And I'm also very Pan-Africanist, right? So I believe in who I am as an African. I believe in who we are as African people and the value that we bring. And so I'm always sad when I hear things that sell us short. In summary, I think that my experience in Ghana was very valuable. Because one thing in particular, I consider myself a pediatric occupational therapist because I work mainly with children. And so I worked mainly with children when I was in Ghana. And one of the things that you will notice, especially in the autistic community, is that, especially in Ghana, you really don't see autistic children with low support needs, or in quotes, the autistic community has changed over time. So there are terms that are archaic or are not really acceptable anymore. So previously, people would say a lot of things like severe autism or profound autism, right? So in Ghana, you see a lot of these cases, severe autism, profound autism. Children usually do not get diagnosed unless it's really serious and they have so many challenges, right? And so that's the situation in Ghana. And so I'm working as an occupational therapist with autistic children in Ghana. I got exposed to a lot of these really challenging situations in a system that was not very accommodating. We didn't have a lot of equipment, and you had to be really creative and really go out of your way to help these people. Unlike in a setting like the US or the UK, where yes, there are challenges, but they have a lot more available to them. They have a lot more resources, and they have a lot more standardized procedures that could make things a little bit easier. So I think that there was so much value, and there is so much value in having to be creative and make something out of nothing like we do in Ghana. Because if you're able to make something out of nothing, when you have everything, it'll be so much easier. And there are also settings in the US that people really do not have anything. They think in the US, everybody is rich and all, but
Yes.
there are people who are really struggling and who do not have resources. And so being able to work in Ghana and in Africa in a setting like that allows you to be very dynamic and be able to work in all sorts of situations when you come to the States or in a place like this that is very varied. Yeah.
So how were you able to integrate into the system, especially when, for instance, you said during your practice in Ghana, there were certain facilities or resources that you were not having, and then transitioning into this system, how were you able to integrate smoothly without a lot of hindrances?
I think say I integrated smoothly.
Yes, yeah, that's what I want you to describe to us, the integration.
I would say there are challenges because aside the fact, if I'm being totally honest, aside the fact that we look down on our education in Ghana, I think that especially in the US, they really prioritize their education and their
Yeah.
standards. So for me to even be recognized as an occupational therapist over here,
Yeah.
to be licensed here, I had to get a master's degree in occupational therapy, a post-professional master's,
Okay.
before I could sit for their licensing exam.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I think that because of how occupational therapy is structured and because of how most educational systems are
Yeah.
structured, whether you are in Africa or you are in the US, you are most likely learning about Western theory and things that have originated in the West. So
Yeah.
basically, the theory is the same, just that the theory you learn in Ghana is really not applicable in Ghana, but the theory you are learning in Ghana is probably very applicable here. So if
Okay.
you are a good student in Ghana and you are book smart, you'll be able to adapt to the system here because you are basically learning about things that go on here.
Okay.
Part. So the learning wasn't too difficult, just trying to figure out the system and going through all the hoops, the bureaucracy, getting licensed and registered. That took a lot of time because for my profession, you have to submit a lot of documents to show that you have practiced and for them to assess the curriculum that you studied with in
Okay.
Ghana. Thankfully, the program in Ghana is accredited by our global organization. So that
Okay.
made it a little bit easier. But I think there were a couple of hoops that I had to go through. It wasn't the smoothest process, especially since I'm the first person from Ghana who has come to practice in the US.
Wow.
Yeah. Hopefully more of us will come soon, but
Yeah.
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 Okay, not really like more of us should come soon because I believe that we should be helping our country and we should be staying in our
Yeah.
country,
Yeah.
But I also believe that there is a lot of resources that we can tap into from here to go
Okay.
back in Ghana. So however we find ourselves, whether we are in Ghana, we can make a great impact. But also when we come here, whatever we are doing should have a way to trickle back and help back home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So speaking of giving back to our community or our country, what do you think the influence of African professionals? Now recently we've had a lot of people moving out of Africa or their specific countries to build capacities, just like you're doing. What kind of impacts or influence would this have on Africans back home?
Well, there are two ways to look at it. You
Okay.
can look like we are all leaving, so brain drain, right? The
Yeah.
country
Mm-hmm.
suffering
Yeah.
because all the people who can make a difference are leaving.
Yeah.
But also, I think that if the people who are leaving
Yeah.
are not leaving, I hope we are all not leaving and saying we are forgetting where we come from.
Mm-hmm.
If we have that consciousness that we are proud Africans, because I think there's a saying by somebody, I forget who, that the African in the diaspora will not be respected as long as the African in Africa is not respected,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we can't come here and expect to have a comfortable life when people are disrespecting and disregarding our people back home. The
Yeah.
people here, racism is real. they'll be racist to us. They will look down on us, right?
Yeah.
Until they have a different view of us as Africans on the continent.
Yeah.
So I think that once we come here, we have access to a lot of resources and connections, and we should find a way to take that back home. A lot of us send money back home. That's cool and all, but I don't think it should end at that. There are so many ways that we can create opportunities for partnerships, global partnerships.
Yeah.
Within our schools, within organizations, even starting foundations back home, going back every now and then as an occupational therapist. Hopefully, I'm hoping that as I establish myself more, I could be going back home and organizing free seminars, free consultations, free screenings, free intervention programs for children back home, because they are the reasons I'm studying actually, because when I was practicing as an occupational therapist in Ghana, I felt really incapacitated. I realized that there was so much that the children and their family needed that we weren't able to give them, right? And so my goal is that get the information, get the resources, get the knowledge, and help our people back home. Because let's face it, in the US and the Western parts of the world, yes, there are challenges, but they also have a lot of people who are working for them, who are trying to make the system better. But you don't have that back home. And so you can make a lot of money in the diaspora, but the real impact is back home.
Okay.
So if you're an impactful person, if you want to have a legacy, then you should be thinking about how can you use all that you've built back home.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Once you are an advocate for the autistic community, I just want to ask this question. How do we deal with stigma, especially with this group of people? It's your area. What are some of the key initiatives that we should take as a people in order for us to do away with this stigma?
Well, I think that it really boils down to education, right?
Okay.
Because I think that a lot of people are afraid of things that they do not understand and do not know. So first of all, trying to find a way to create awareness, let people know what autism is and what the prognosis of it is.
Okay.
No two autistic people are the same. So autism could look very different. There are people with low support needs, people with high support needs, right? Unfortunately, in Ghana, we see a lot more of people with high support needs, and it looks like they might not have much of a typical future, right? But it's also because we do not know, or we are not trying to intervene for them in the right ways, right? If we were more receptive and understood that autism is just a neurological condition, it's a difference in the way our brains are wired, right? So if your brain is wired differently, that means that you might need a different way to learn. You might need a different way to look at things, right? The way that we accommodate people with differences, like autism is just a difference.
Okay.
Like if you're able to see somebody who is an Ewe or a Ga and accept the person for who they are and their mannerisms and all the way they do things, why can't you see somebody who is autistic and accept them for the way they do things? I think one of the biggest problems we have is that we try to make autistic people conform to a certain standard of normal.
Okay.
But really, we are all different in our own ways. We all have our little tics. They may not be as profound or as glaring as some people with autism, some autistic people, but we all have our differences. So realizing that the fact that this person is probably flapping their hands or jumping all over the place does not make them less human, or does not mean that they have nothing valuable to offer. And you realize that a lot of autistic people, the things that they do that seem abnormal or atypical to us are just things that they are doing to regulate themselves, to be able to live, just live and exist, So if it's not hurting you, right? If you see a child flapping their hands, it's not hurting you, right? Leave the child alone, because that's how they are calming down. I think one of the examples I like to use is, personally, I'm somebody who cannot stand heat, right? If I'm in a room and it's really hot, I can't concentrate. Some of us, different things about us. Like maybe some people like to, I don't know, drink a lot of water, or they just like the fact that they are drinking something. They like the feeling of
Yeah.
drinking. Like people have different things about them,
Yeah.
right? But you realize that once you meet that need, once you are in an environment that is conducive for you, you're able to be your best self. And so that's how we should just see autistic people and people with disabilities in general, right?
Okay.
They're in an environment that everything is conducive for them, able to function optimally, right? So
Okay.
the reason that they are not functioning or we have a problem with them is because we have not created an environment where they can function properly.
Yeah.
So instead of looking at how do I fix them or how do I make them fit into my environment, let's think about how do we make this environment conducive for all of us to live in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So on this note, then I will ask you, what message do you then think African youth needs to hear now?
I think we should know that we are amazing people. We have so much potential. We have so much value. And our value isn't in following the way of the white man, in
Okay.
quote. Our
Yes.
value is in being our authentic selves, right? Because diversity, even in the United States and most parts of the world right now, one of the biggest movements is the diversity, inclusion, equity movement, right?
Yeah.
They want more Black people who are authentic, who can, for so many reasons, not all
Yeah.
of them the right reasons, but there is value in being your authentic self. There is value in being proud of who you are as a Black person. And so never let anybody make you feel inferior. Don't make yourself feel inferior just because you're Black or just because you were born in Africa or you studied in Africa, because we have so much value in the things that we do and the people that we are. And I think that one thing that I think that we are very resilient people. So we should just keep up with the resilience. We should keep pushing, right? There may be instances where like you face resistance and opposition. Even here, like they are not it's not all the doors that as a Black person you'll be allowed into, but it doesn't mean you should stop trying to enter, right?
Yeah.
Enter, and when you enter, open the door so that other Black people can come inside. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. So my next question will be, if you could turn the clock of life back, what kind of advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Basically, this similar advice or same advice. I would just tell myself, because I really never saw myself over here. I thought I would stay in Africa all my life, be in Ghana and establish a business or just live a normal, simple, ordinary Ghanaian life,
Yeah.
right? I just think I'll tell myself that there is so much ahead of me and I have so much potential, right? So even though it doesn't look like it, because 18 years old, I think in college, some of the courses were very difficult and I didn't even think that I would make it. Like I was very stressed about a lot of unnecessary things.
Yeah.
But I could go back, I'll just tell myself to take it easy, trust God, like God first all the time. Yes, focus on the most important things in life, which are God, um, family, your education, career, believe in yourself, and just trust God, basically. Trust God and
Yeah.
trust His process for you.
Sure. Okay. Finally, if there's anything you actually wanted to put across that perhaps I did not touch on, you can feel free to do so.
Um, I don't even know. I feel like I've said so much and I don't know what I've not said.
Yeah.
But I think this is a great initiative, and I think thank you for bringing African professionals together, bringing Africans together to uplift us and to uplift the continent. I think it's a very valuable thing, and I really hope that a lot more of us will take pride in who we are
Right.
and know that we have so much to contribute and so much to offer. We shouldn't look down on ourselves or where we are coming from at all, because we are more than we give ourselves credit for. We do more than we give ourselves credit for. Yeah. Basically, I'm sure when I'm sleeping in the middle of the night, I'll think of things I should have said.
Don't worry, we'll have part two of this session. That's a promise that I can give you so that we will delve deeper into other issues.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll
All right.
look forward to that.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time and I appreciate it. Even though it was a short notice, but you made time for us.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Okay. All right. Have a good one. Thank you.